Hello. So, a little while ago, I was reading The Economist, as I do sometimes, and I ran across this article on the speed people listen to audiobooks. It's not world-shakingly important. It's not an economic miracle. It's not a thing about history. It's just something that's interesting. It's an interest piece, right? It's, hey, this is how things are changing. This is what's happening in the world. And I'll just paraphrase it. But it basically says young people want audiobooks, podcasts, and videos to go faster, which is the subline here. Polling by The Economist and YouGov found that 31% of Americans between the ages of 18 and 29 listen to audio at playback speeds faster than 1x, compared with 8% of people aged 45 and over. A more garrulous pace does not seem to affect listeners' ability to concentrate. The average person speaks at a rate about 150 words per minute, but most brains are capable of processing information faster than that, says Marcus Pierce, a cognitive scientist at Queen Mary University of London. For audio and video platforms, there is no downside to offering different playback options. The more books or episodes a subscriber gets through, the better the advertising and sales revenue. But for listeners, the experience differs greatly between 1x and 2x. There's an art of pacing, tone, and suspension to read aloud, says Kimberly Wetherall, an audiobook narrator. If you speed that up too much, you're losing that part of the performance. Rhetoric often relies on rhythm and pauses for emphasis and meaning. Few actors race through the soliloquies in Hamlet, for instance, yet for many, to speed or not to speed is no longer a question. It's basically just saying that younger people listen to audiobooks and they're more likely to listen to audiobooks at a fast speed, 1.2 times, 1.5 times, 2 times. I've done this on occasion, sat there and listened to somebody talk or listen to a voice read information out loud at a faster speed than one. And I find that if I concentrate, I can intake all that information. I can run it through in my mind. I can picture it well. But I myself tend to prefer the 1x speed. I tend to prefer this quality that is possible to achieve. Not necessarily will you achieve a good quality of speaking when the playback is at 1x speed, normal speed, speaking speed, but I find it more likely. And as I recite more and talk more, especially with poetry, I grow to appreciate taking the time, right? Taking the time to get things right. Taking the time to emphasize. It's not just about information, it's about the way you intake that information. Now, there are books I'll read faster. There's stuff which is technical. There's bits which I am familiar with, which I'll read faster. Sometimes when I'm reading a manga, for example, I'd find myself just skimming the pages and I'm not really sure what people said because I've seen the situation before. Like, okay, this is a rom-com, this is a comedy, and I bing, 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 bing. Okay, I know what's happening here. He's talking about his parents and how they abandoned him, or she's talking about how she was bullied in school because she was this or that, or this is a joke about the body, or this is a joke which pokes fun at a teacher, or this is a joke which refers to this political event that was going on at the time. And sometimes I'll skip past that to get to the points I'm interested in. It's the same when reading a book, right? I'll go through. And some stuff, like these news articles here, I just skim through. I don't keep all of it in my mind. I'm not being very careful about understanding all of it. I'm just sort of intaking it because it's pure information. Whereas when it's a storybook or when it's a philosophy book, I find that I like to take my time and digest what's happening. Or I like to skip around to get to the points and parts which I find more important or which have more depth, which I want to devote more of my thinking time to, and then I'll focus on those, slow those down, and speed the pieces in between up. I react dynamically. And this happens when speaking too. Suddenly I'll realize that I'm speaking really fast and I should slow down and enunciate properly. I should be careful about how I say certain things. I should not leap too quickly to conclusions. Perhaps I should moderate what I say and how I say it. And that's how we live our life, right? I mean, I'm mentioning this piece because it's slightly interesting, but there's more in depth about that. And there's more, like, what is that, like, more in depth about that? That's not a proper sentence, right? I'm simply trying to get an idea out. I'm trying to hammer on the door of my mind and open it up so that the fire inside can intake some oxygen and start blazing brightly again. And sometimes it's just little pieces like that, which make me go, okay, what do I work with? How do I think? How do I read? How do I intake information? How do I regurgitate information? When is it super fast? When is it super slow? Do I need to focus? Is this a poem, a piece of poetry, an idea which takes its time to percolate through the rhyme so that I can climb up high and then jump off the cliff, leap down, spread my wings, and fly like an eagle across the sky? Then screaming open my beak and allow the entire world beneath me to be aware of my creaking mass, my philosophical passage through this glass that is the earth and the air, which transmits sound everywhere. We leap into pieces like that, leap into rhyme and poetry sometimes, because that's the best way to say something. We can't say something directly. We can look at a picture and go, I'm hurt by that, or I'm happy about that, and we can't say why, but maybe we can say it in different ways, and maybe there are times in our own lives where we say things we don't really know what we mean, but we understand it later. Poetry, I think, tends to be like that, which is why I speak poetry and I recite poetry and I make poetry, right? Because it's a way of coming at a problem indirectly. It opens up my mind so that, I am the one who is spreading out information at 1 or 2 or 3 times speed, or half speed sometimes. And I find that if I speed up how I speak and the information I'm outputting, then what happens is sometimes I reveal things I didn't know were the case. I say ideas I didn't know I had. They just burst out in their not clear sometimes. It's an ugly phrasing. It's an incomplete sentence. It's a reference to a book I read once 13 years ago that no one understands, but I wrote it down. Or it's something that happened 2 weeks ago that's been running around in my head. And hey, apparently it's still important to me. I still remember it. Maybe it was 2 or 3 years ago, and I'm mentioning it again and again and again. And then I read my book or my writings and I go, oh, that was more important than I thought it was. I'm seeing the links here because I could not have done that when I wrote something. When I sat down in my room and just started typing madly for 3 hours, then at the end I come out of my fugue, I come out of my writing coma, and I go, I don't know what I wrote, really. You look at it the next day and you think, wow, I'm terrible, or wow, that's a real good turn of phrase, and I couldn't have planned that out if I had tried. It just sort of burst out. I mean, more often it's not great. And for my life, I tend to move slow. I tend to take my time. I tend to want things to rhyme. And what I mean by that is I am a story maker. I make stories in my head about how things are and how they should go and what the meaning of certain events is to me and how I should act and receive. I take my time. I'm slow. And I fix things. I think about events. If I'm buying a computer, I'm going to take 3 days and like 5 hours of Googling to figure out what I want, the specs, the price, where can I get it for a good amount. Do I really need it? I'll go back and forth for hours with myself. Okay, should I buy it? Should I buy it? Should I not buy it? Do I have the funds? Will this work? It will actually be usable. And, more often than not, I buy something and it turns out I don't actually use it. I have a flute over here, for example, that I got like 2 years ago because I learned flute in elementary school and I was really bad at it. And then I saw a flute for like $60 online. It looked like it was in okay condition. And I had some money at the time, so I said, hey, let me buy a flute and I'll get down and I'll practice it. I'll focus it. And I haven't really done that. It's been sitting here, constructed in my room for about 2 months now. I blow on it once in a while, but it's not usable. So, we know this about ourselves sometimes. And, I'm not that person who sits down and goes, I'm going to focus on this event and achieve it. I'm not the super fast explainer. I think and wonder and ponder and hesitate. Oh my gosh, I hesitate. And that's part of why I'm doing this. Part of why I'm speaking to a camera, speaking to a microphone, without moderating my speech. I know that if I planned what I was going to say and I sat down and I recorded it, because I've done this, I've recorded speeches and ideas which I've thought about and I wrote down, and then I realized halfway through the recording that I missed something, or that I've stuttered over my words, or that an idea is not fully explained, or that I went off on a tangent because I didn't fully explain the idea in the paper, or I assumed something that, hey, everybody knows this, and it turns out everybody doesn't know that. I assumed I know it, but then as soon as I begin to explain it, it turns out I don't myself understand it very well, even though I thought I did, and so if I'm searching for perfection, if I'm moving slow, I find that I will move so slow as to not achieve anything. I will move so slow as to have notes and ideas for a book, and it takes me 10 years to finish that. So if I just force myself to sit down and make something, force myself to sit down and write something, force myself to stand up here and say something about a book I read, then it turns out messy, it turns out odd. And no one wants to watch me babble on for 2 hours about economics, or to read poetry for an hour, messing up half the poems, saying them incorrectly, not staring at the camera, staring down for 30 minutes, reciting some speech. But I tell myself that, and I'm relatively sure it's true right now. And if I think that forever and ever, I'll never complete anything. I'll just be stuck where I am, planning and thinking and dreaming and screaming on the inside, but not doing anything. And sometimes it's books I read and poems, but occasionally it's just stuff like this. It's little pieces of interest articles that I go, that has meaning to me in some strange way, that the speed at which people read, or the speed at which people intake information, isn't that related to the speed at which people produce information? What about, how do I produce information? Well, I tend to speak fast on camera here, but think slow, because if I'm going to do something correctly, I should at least do it well. But I also know that if I do that, that'll take forever, so I just burst out sometimes in rhyme and rhythm, making signs and having plans. And if I keep that too tight, you lose part of the nuance. If I try to send out information in a very dense, perfect package, I take my time preparing a message, then the nuance becomes lost, I would say. The ideas and the feelings I have are masked behind these ideas I have of what is proper and polite and correct. should I not mention this name? Should I not think about this idea? Should I be careful how I insult this group or praise that group or talk about this idea? And, I don't know half of what I'm speaking about. I'm just doing it anyway, and I don't know what I'm saying here. I'm just trying to, I think I want to carve out a space in this work I am doing where on occasion I don't have to talk about a book. I don't have to recite a poem. I don't have to talk about a speech. I don't have to start with something that's deep and meaningful and important. I can have a piece like young people want audiobooks, podcasts, and videos to go faster. And I can say that leads me to an idea, to an idea, to an idea, to an idea, and 7 ideas down the chain, here's something I want to talk about that was brought about by this idea. And I don't know how to introduce it, but it starts with this, somehow ends up at that. And so if I stand in front of the video here, in front of the camera here, and make a video recording myself talking about inane ideas without requiring that I myself have a firm foundation in somebody else's thought and creation, then maybe I can speak my mind. Because I don't speak my mind very often. I am quiet in real life because I'm observing. And I've been quiet for a very long time, and it started to become injurious, I feel. So I want to be louder, and to be loud means to be unacceptable. It means to be a disturbance. It means to be impolite, to be rude, to say that such and such an idea is foolish, the other idea is grand, or I think it is, and maybe I don't know all of the information I should. I don't have all the plans in my head. I haven't practiced what I'm going to say, but if I can stand out and here, at least, speaking to no one, meander on a long idea and take my time, speaking not at 2 times speed, thinking not at 2 times speed, thinking not at normal speed, but maybe even less than that, maybe 0.08 or 0.05. Not in the speed of my speech, I would say, but in the density of information I'm aiming to impart as I reflect in strange ways upon the light of the moon in my life and the burning of the sun. And that doesn't always make sense because I add ands and ands and ands. I concatenate my sentences one on top of the other, creating a babble and a meandering run of words like I was a stream or a river rolling down from the mountains, or like I was a wave brushed by the sun, or a leaf of a tree, or a rock rolling down a hill, whatever it is I am and I'm doing. Sometimes, even if I am interested in philosophy and in politics and poetry and the news, I can also just be interested in myself and have a space where if I stand up and force myself to talk every day about something, then what comes out? What fierce torments roil out of me into the air and create clouds and rain and thunder? I don't know. So I just stand here and attempt to show that, because I'm really, really tired of being silent. So I might sound a little violent on occasion, raise my voice, quiet down, walk around a subject or an idea or a statement I'm probably going to say things in the heat of the moment which I don't entirely mean, but which I possibly mean, or someone has a viewpoint like that, and of course I'm going to be taken out of context. Even by myself, I'll watch one of these videos a year from now and go, "Oh my God, how did I say that? Does it? I stumble over my words. I was messing up or something, right? Performative or actuative, as if that's a word. I'll make up words and ideas. I'll make mistakes, but the point is, I'm making mistakes because I want to make mistakes. Mistakes that matter and mean something, and for them to mean something, they have to exist in the world and affect the world. They can't just be in my head. Listening to audiobooks is good enough, but writing them or speaking them is something else. Learning from the audiobooks is nice, but if I don't do anything with that learning, then why did I even bother? Well, I'm bothering, for now at least, so that I can speak here in a speedy and stumbling fashion. Often I'll have plans and ideas, but today at least I just have feelings. My own social awkwardness. I don't know, sometimes I feel like I'm a cat sitting under the bushes staring at all the people go by. Kind of worried and wondering what they're doing. I'm not the friendly cat that goes out to ask for pets or food. I'm the cat who's watching you and maybe eventually after a week or two comes out and wants to know how you're doing. I'm the cat, not Garfield. Or normal. I don't know what cat I am. Or maybe I'm a dog. One that's been kicked once too often. Or maybe I'm a book. If I was a book, I think I would like to be a wizard's book. As in, do you want to be a wizard? I like to be a book that every time you open it, it is different. There are complexities in the human mind and the human spirit, and complexities in, every book, every poem means something different when we read it the second time or a third time, or when we return to it in 10 years or 30 years. We will skip past certain parts because we recognize them. We've already internalized their messages and meanings. And then there are other pieces which we slow down for because we find there is in them a vision or a message of something more.